GRC community. I'm Elizabeth Abraham, AVP in Global Services at MetricStream. Welcome to today's discussion on how to optimize value through business scenario-focused implementations. In this session, our panelists provide insight into how a truly robust and integrated GRC program enables companies to take smarter risk, build a culture of ethics and integrity, and keep pace with constant business and regulatory changes. We understand that an effective GRC program isn't built overnight. It is essentially a journey that companies embark on, gradually moving up the GRC maturity curve until they have a well-integrated, coordinated, and optimized GRC program in place. Focus use cases within programs are recommended because most successful GRC programs typically demonstrate quick benefits and successes in order to build support and adopt their new solution. This pattern can be observed in the correlation between time and cost to implement, with high levels of satisfaction among both end users and business owners. Our panel will address how building a strong GRC program enables companies to act with urgency and agility to changes in our environment. One is even as significant as COVID-19. Now, let's take a look at how to quickly and effectively bring online a COVID policy management use case in practical terms, and then pivot this into operational win and bring long-term strategic value with tie-ins to established and industry standard control testing frameworks. I am excited that we have assembled a very unique panel to discuss this topic. First, we have Joseph O'Connick, the GRC architect and administrator at Globe Life and the recipient of the GRC Practice Leader Award, which recognizes inspiring practitioners for on-hand leadership and for promoting GRC throughout their organization. Next, we have Bhaskar Dasari, founder and CEO of Vivid Edge Corporation and a strategic implementation partner to MetricStream. And finally, we have Thomas Ludwig, VP Customer Advocacy at MetricStream and a subject matter expert regarding use case focused implementations. So let's begin with you, Joseph.
Elizabeth, thanks for having me on the panel. Let's just say your management comes to you and they need you to implement a system for a COVID-19 response policy quickly and accurately. You need to be able to distribute and track policies and attestations to effectively manage operational, data, or physical security and safety. There are several things you need to keep in mind that will help and steps that you can take along the way to execute this as quickly as possible. The first is to leverage existing policy repositories, whether those policy repositories be in a system or manually on the network somewhere. It is really important not to try and reinvent this wheel. Second, use existing workflows. Again, if they are in a system, use them out of the system. Leverage those workflows to assist you with getting these policies out as quickly as possible. If they're not in the system and they're manual workflows, work with your business to translate those as quickly as possible into your system. Also, keep in mind, as you're doing these workflows, as you're setting this up, it is terribly important to have the roles defined that people are going to need in order to complete this process. You're going to need authors of policies. You're going to need reviewers of policies. And ultimately, you're going to need people that publish the policies or the ultimate signers or authority of that policy. This as well can be done inside or outside of the system, preferably inside the system. And lastly, make sure that your distribution groups are accurate and thorough. A policy not sent to the appropriate people is not an effective policy. It takes some time to get this done. Luckily, at Globe Life, we already have the policy document management system put in play, and it has helped us greatly to leverage all those things above to assist with any COVID-19 responses that may be required by management. And finally, and most importantly, a swift and accurate implementation methodology is required in order to be highly effective in the GRC world and as a response to the COVID-19 virus.
Thanks so much, Joseph. You've teed up Bhaskar. Bhaskar, as our implementation partner, can you elaborate in practical terms on how to approach an expedited use case such as the one Joseph has described? What project management strategies and best practices should we keep in mind to reduce risk and promote user adoption?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me on the panel. And as rightly pointed out, we have different implementation strategies for different situations. And in this particular instance, looks like urgency is of utmost importance. So some of the key considerations that we could come up with is right off the gate, I think we should keep it simple. Whatever solution that we are trying to put in place, try to stay out of the box and keep the scope limited to operational gains and keep the strategic gains for a later phase, and pretty much focus on speed and accuracy. And having said that, how do you achieve it? It is very imperative that we have to involve the business directly, and so that they can drive value and acceptance to the solution. So, and also, since we are going to be directly working with the business, we should try to take the opportunity to plan on a phase two, which would help us, focus on the strategic gains by aligning the controls to policies. An effective implementation of a policy is largely dependent on how we could actually have recorded controls so that we can understand the effectiveness. Having said that, the approach that we're going to use for this particular instance would be more of an agile workshop approach, and it is important to keep the team sort of a matrix team that involves business as well as the subject matter experts on the GRC framework. Having said that, if you can, in an agile Scrum world on a day-to-day basis, we would like to sort of list out the major tasks that we need to go about. We would want to do review, finalize, prepare, load of all enhancements to policy repository, as Joseph said. And once we have accomplished that to our satisfaction, would like to definitely get the roles documented and configured in the system, and followed by workflow, which is pretty a versatile tool in most of the packaged applications provided in the marketplace, including metric stream. And we should try and keep it simple, not overcomplicated, but essentially document and configure the workflow and approval process. And lastly, of course, document the distribution list group to whom we want to publish these policy changes, so that there is an organizational awareness to the policy changes right off from this use case. And lastly, I would say we definitely have to do an end-to-end process check. And it's almost like a day in the life of a policy author, a reviewer, an approver, and also the distribution group members. This way, everybody kind of nods and gives us a green signal to go ahead and deploy the solution. I think, one thing I would like to say as a concluding remark is to certainly, since we have the business in the room, make sure that we have a phase 2 that has been plotted out, which allows us to again align the controls and policies. So back to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Bhaskar. Now, Thomas, as Joseph outlined how a business may approach this initial challenge from an urgent operational need, and Bhaskar discussed some implementation strategies to enable the technology, now that this foothold is established, what are the next steps a company and a program manager can utilize to expand the program, to mature the GRC program strategically, and to enhance the business value and increase ROI?
For joining this session. I'm in full agreement with what Joseph said about quickly addressing an emerging need. And I also fully agree with Bhaskar about how to systematically achieve this in an agile project. Let me add to this by talking about the long-term and the strategic dimension. It is essential to be fast and agile, obviously. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we're not just putting Band-Aids over Band-Aids. And of course, that is a risk. We must not create a structure that only works in the short term. The good news is that there is a way to combine short-term agility and long-term strategic alignment. They don't have to contradict each other. They can be fully harmonized, and we can really achieve long-term ROI after starting with an agile short-term project. But so how does it work? In the case of IT GRC, the answer is that we have to leverage industry standard content. Standards such as ISO 27001 and SOC 2 embody a vast amount of collective knowledge that we can put to use very, very quickly. We can deploy a setup that maps out the ISO and SOC 2 requirements to NIST SP 853 controls in under a day. To be clear, the setup will not yet be tailored to your specific needs. It will still include things that are not fully relevant for you, and it will not include other things that are specific to your business. But it gives us a tremendous head start. Basically, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. From there, we can map out, for instance, an existing enterprise control structure if you already have that, or we can take the industry standard as a starting point from where we tailor. In our experience, it will take, for example, several ISO 27001 certification cycles to reach a fully optimized program. So it means that the first ISO 27001 certification will still be somewhat boilerplate, but as we go through multiple cycles, we'll reach the point where it's really optimized for your organization. So using content, not reinventing the wheel, translates to superior speed, and we are very confident that this can be executed extremely quickly. But how does this help in Joseph's COVID-19 scenario? What is very convenient is that there is almost always somebody who has spent years thinking about the logic that is behind the problem that we're trying to address right now. For example, in the case that Joseph brought out, remote access policies, you can leverage NIST SP 846. That's just another NIST standard that complements the more prominent NIST 853 control catalog. And the SP 846 is a guide to telework, remote access, and bring your own device. Not only does this guide lay out all the topics that we need to consider to make our COVID-19 scenario secure, it also gives us mappings to standard NIST roles that we have to test to prove that this is fully secure. So not only can we roll out quickly, but we can also prove very effectively that this is safe. We can follow the simple procedure, certify your policies, map to a standard, in this case, SP 846, instantaneously link to the controls that you may already have in place or that are readily available, and run systemic and efficient tests on day 2. The point is that short-term problem solving and long-term strategy are fully aligned. The secret is a library structure that allows to consume industry knowledge and tailor it to your needs. We can really stand on the shoulders of giants and at the same time be very nimble and agile in what we have to address to meet the challenges of the day. Thank you. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Excellent. I hope the audience has found this session as interesting, practical, and as exciting as I have. To summarize, organizations with successful GRC programs are typically those who can demonstrate quick benefits and successes in order to build support and adoption for their new solution. In our case, an external event, the COVID pandemic, has caused an immediate need. And a quick win can enable companies to realize value and continue its GRC journey. A sincere thanks to our esteemed panelists, Joseph, Bhaskar, and Thomas.